we are not comfortable, or to say that we are not assured of some internal security as it was then. Because although there weren't a lot of legislation, we see that by reason of the fact that there was an institution that the people could trust in those circumstances to maintain peace, internal security was not jeopardized within that particular period. So I would say that on a legal point of view, it was not so much about the laws we had. Because if you look at the 1957 Constitutions, the Act, and then the 1960 Constitution, you don't really see a lot of provisions on the establishment of security agencies. We don't really see a lot of legislation, even from Parliament, establishing a lot of security agencies. But we see that we had a strong police service, we had a strong military service, and that alone built public confidence and public trust in the security system within the country. So the lesson we can draw from that is that it was not more of the legislation, it was more of policy and public confidence in the institutions we had.
Okay. Thank you very much, Noah, for that. So I think that now having understood that, having understood some of the happenings or some of the insurgencies that happened during our pre-independence era, and knowing that we had the British military presence as well as that of Ghanaians, Edmund, to you, I would like to help us know some of the socioeconomic impact that these uprisings had on Gold Coast, had on Ghana, and then some of them which can be classified as security breaches.
Okay.
Hello, Noah.
I'd like to clarify something. The British were present, but the British constituted the upper echelons of the officer corps. So they did not dominate in numerical strength. They did not dominate the Ghana army. I just want to clarify. So not to contradict Noah, but just to give clarity. Their presence was limited to the senior officer corps. During the colonial era, it was the British were the officers and the men were made up of Ghanaians. So when we became independent, we had to gradually transition from a British officer corps to an indigenous officer corps. So that's the distinction. It was the riots when there were political campaigns, particularly with the separation of Dr. Nkrumah from the UGCC. The campaigns that went on, the political rallies that went on were characterized often with violence. So if we are having this conversation today, 66 years, people of Ghana have not learned lessons. And like Noah said, it might not necessarily be the legislation. It might not necessarily be the laws. It's have to do with Ghanaians as a people, because we can pass whatever laws that we want and people can still go on rampage and kill themselves. I think since time immemorial, killing each other has been illegal. Causing bodily harm to each other has been illegal. No matter how often or how fewer times or the often times we prescribe it in law, these have been illegal acts even before the Europeans arrived. However, it comes down to the attitudes of the people. It comes down to the structural mentality. Is it the patronage system? What is it that is causing people to resort to violence to settle political differences? Because people were tried and executed for political violence before independence. In fact, when Ghana was executed for stabbing someone over politics, And today we are dealing with the same issues. Committees are being set on ayahuasca and all of that. So it is not so much about the legislation to further what being passed. Committees keep being set, recommendations keep being made. I think it is the attitudes. And if we are going back to the books, we will need to reconsider the makeup of our politics, where so much depends on so little. I think that's the current majority leader, or say Chairman Sam Bonsu, described Ghana's system as an imperial precedent, where the only way we have expression is through elections. So everything, the election cycle decides which school your child is going to, whether somebody is going to be rich or not, whether somebody is going to make a fortune, get a government job or not. Everything rests with that one act of election. And so it then becomes natural. I think as we go further, we can break it down why so much of the violence is concentrated around elections and political parties and political arrangements. We might have to look beyond criminalize. Why are people feeling that there is so much dependence on that one act, on so much dependence on who wins an election? I think that might be the needed approach, because 6 years, and we can quote things from just last 2 years and last year that align almost the sequence of events are almost the same as what was happening the 1951 and the 19. And then you ask yourself, is it a country that is learning any lessons? Once we agree that our problems come from within, and are the laws enough? Are they strong enough? We are condemning people to long prison sentences and the violence still goes on. So we might have to think of doing things differently. That's my take on that. I hope I did not digress so far from your question.
Edmund, I think I would have a follow-up question on what you just said. So I would take it within the post-independence era. So in this moment, you are making us understand that we are still having political impact with regards to our post-independence era and then our security. So can you please enlighten us on what you think are some of the threats that are currently we are facing as a country in terms of security?
So in the last 66 years, if you are to isolate the plethora of coups that has taken place in Ghana, you will observe that beyond the coups, because beyond the coups, there have been other issues. So number one is the plurality of coups made our security architecture issue, because there were several coups and there was an ever-present threat of a coup. Our security institutions became concentrated on protecting regimes, preventing coups, than looking at than having a people security, a human security framework. So everything that we did was in perpetuation of a regime. Now, in trying to establish the order of a regime, we might have inadvertently solved other problems, but the concentration was not helping people the concentration was on saving regimes, preventing a coup. So we might as a country reconsider where we prioritize. Do we just a coup? The fact that Ghana can boast of being a country that has had a long regime of democracy since 1993. So now 30 years of democracy. Is it all that we can boast of, or we can go back and look at the people? Because if you look at all the coup makers, they are clean, because historians are still, whether it was greed or it was a grievance. So that greed versus grievance thing is still out there. But their claim was that they were helping solve socioeconomic needs. Socioeconomic needs, the basic, the physiological needs, food, shelter, she would do it better. The us versus them mentality, the idea that people were enriching themselves against the populace. Every regime that came, every military, particularly the military regimes, every military regime that came claimed to be the panacea for corruption. They claimed that with their regime, they will end present. So we still have the things that we thought the coups will solve. So when you isolate the coups, even without the coups in this democratic dispensation, so in a military regime, we are scared of a coup. In a democratic regime, we are scared of a coup. Now that we are not, so it seems the violence is ever present. The players have just changed. The people are just being violent towards each other. The one in party A is against the one in party B just because they belong to different parties. Identity politics have become the order of the day, and people are still suffering. And it is easy to recruit people for violence. Security reports identified socioeconomic needs and the last agency. And so, in as much as we want to form new security agencies, like my colleague alluded to, in as much as we want to legislate more, bring in more policies, the action on the ground is at variance with what is on the book. Dr. Nkrumah said, and I think Mr. Adamtey will give a better quote, so I'm just paraphrasing, that the people are not allowed to talk because now you say it is illegal for them to do X, it's illegal for them to do Y. The longer they wait, they are going to come up with some volcanic eruption. It's like you suppress them, give them pressure. The day they come out, you will not be able to withstand it. No amount of police. How many police? So the solution to our security threats, challenges, whatever, is not a stronger police force. It's not more police officers. It's about solving the basic needs of the people, making sure the people are taken care of. And let us stop overemphasizing it is not important. It is important that we have a professional police force, we have a strong police force and all of that. But that is not the solution in itself.
Okay. Edmund, thank you very much. So Noah, Edmund was mentioning that pre-independence they were mostly concentrating on preventing coups and all that. And I want to pick your mind on this. Don't you think that was
pre-independence they were concentrating on preventing coups? The coup prevention thing came post-1960. Supposed to be prevention mechanisms. So those are post-independence. Coups became a threat post-independence.
Exactly. Thank you very much for the clarification. So